And for more analysis on the World Refugees Day, we're now joined live here in the studio by Kitty McKinsey, spokesperson for the UNHCR, responsible for Eastern Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region. Thank you, Kitty, for joining us tonight. So, 50 million numbers, that's a crazy figure right there. And the UNHCR is saying the numbers are going up and up. What could be the reasons for this?
Too many wars and not enough peace. There's so many conflicts, especially here in Africa. In these numbers are included the conflicts in Mali, Central African Republic, South Sudan. In fact, these numbers are from 2013. They don't even fully reflect what's happening in the Central African Republic. They don't reflect at all the conflict that broke out in South Sudan at the end of last year. Obviously, Syria contributes hugely to the numbers, but let's not forget there are situations that have been going on for decades. Half the refugees that we're taking care of have been in exile for more than 5 years, and this is a disaster for every single individual. Most of the refugees want to go back to where they came from. Nobody wants to be a refugee.
Indeed. So what could possibly be done to ensure there is more stability in conflict-prone areas to avoid this tide, rather to stem the tide we're seeing of displacement of huge populations of people?
You know, unfortunately, humanitarian agencies like the UN Refugee Agency and all our partners, we're helping out in an emergency. We provide protection and food and drinking water and shelter and safety, the things that people need immediately. But we're not the ones who can bring peace or avoid the conflict. So we need good statesmen, good politicians. We need for there to be peace, basically. That's the only thing that's going to keep people from becoming refugees or help them to go home.
And talking about going back to their home countries, repatriation of Somali refugees, for instance, here in Kenya. Let's talk a little bit about that. How best can it be done, considering that Somalia is still a very fragile country, and on the other hand, we have Kenya quite concerned about the threat posed to its national security?
Every country has a right to protect its national security. That's quite obvious. But the question of Somalis returning, it has to be done voluntarily. Somalia, Kenya, and the UN Refugee Agency signed an agreement last November that governs that, and talks have not yet been held to establish the conditions under which the refugees could go home. Nearly every refugee I've ever met wants to go back to their country. And the essential element for the Somalis is, and there are 2.4 million of them around the world who are looking for a solution, is that they have to find a solution. They have to go home in safety and dignity. They have to go home when they want to, when they volunteer to go home. Right. They should not be pushed back.
Right. And finally, how is the UNHCR coping in terms of funding, given the numbers that we're seeing here?
Well, it's unquestionable that with the recession we've had, with countries cutting back, that we are facing gaps in what we can do. We always can cope with the emergencies, we can cope with the basic needs, but there are lots of things that we are not able to do. And it's really a shame that, for example, Central African Republic, that crisis has just been overlooked entirely. It doesn't get the headlines that some of the others do. And obviously, if we had more money, we could help people a lot better. We could provide for their needs. And let's not forget that 50%, half of the displaced people in the world today are children. That's never happened before. And so, you know, think of each individual, each single person, that we could help better if we had more money. That's clear.
And just something else I'd want you to say publicly, just off the mic, you did tell me about this figure of 50 million people, and you said it would be an equivalent of what?
It would be the 26th largest country in the world. It's more people than live in Kenya. It's more people than live in Tanzania. It's 50% more people than live in Canada. It's just a staggering, staggering number.
Indeed.
It's almost as many people as live in South Africa. If all the displaced people in the world made up one country, it would be almost the size of the population of South Africa. It's just hard to believe. And if I could just quickly say one more thing, the number of people who are displaced every single day would fill one of Kenya's largest football stadiums.
That does put these statistics definitely in perspective. Kitty, thanks very much for joining us tonight.